Sometimes the cruelest silence isn't when people say nothing. It's when they watch you fall apart and choose to walk away. The laughter came first, low and scattered, echoing beneath the vaulted ceiling of the small-town church. As petals wilted on polished floors and a bride stood frozen at the altar, her hands trembling, her eyes searching a door that would never open again. "He's not coming," someone whispered. She should have known better. Another voice added, sharper this time. 3 quick glances, 2 muffled chuckles, 1 moment that shattered everything. Claire Whitmore didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. She just stood there, quiet, dignity slipping through her fingers like grains of sand no one cared to catch. Outside, the late afternoon sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the parking lot, where a worn-out pickup truck sat idling for a moment longer than necessary. Ethan Brooks watched through the cracked windshield, his calloused hands resting on the steering wheel, his reflection faint in the glass, tired eyes tracing the scene he wasn't meant to be part of. "Not your business," he muttered under his breath. "Just drive." But he didn't. Inside the church, heels clicked against hardwood. Guests gathered their coats. Conversations rose and fell like waves of quiet judgment. "You okay?" a woman asked, not waiting for an answer before turning away. "This is embarrassing," a man said under his breath. Claire's fingers curled into the fabric of her dress, her breath shallow, her world narrowing into a single, suffocating moment where dignity was the only thing she had left, and even that was slipping. Ethan stepped out of his truck. Gravel crunched under his boots. The air carried the faint scent of pine and old wood, and something heavier, something like regret. He walked slower than he needed to, like a man arguing with himself in every step. "Don't get involved. She's not your problem. You've done this before." 3 thoughts, 2 steps, 1 decision. The church doors creaked as he pushed them open, and for a moment, the room stilled, not because of who he was, but because he didn't belong. Work boots, faded denim, silence. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't acknowledge the stares. He walked straight toward her. Claire barely noticed at first, her vision blurred, her thoughts louder than the room, until a shadow fell gently beside her. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice low, steady, not demanding attention, just offering presence. She turned, confused, guarded. "You don't have to stand here alone." The words were simple, almost ordinary, but they carried something rare, respect without expectation. A pause stretched between them. The murmurs in the room softened, curiosity replacing mockery. Ethan shrugged off his worn jacket and placed it carefully over her shoulders, not rushing, not forcing, just enough to shield her from the cold air and colder eyes. "Let's get you out of here," he added quietly. Claire hesitated, her instincts pulling her back, her pride holding her still. "Why?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Ethan met her gaze, not trying to fix her, not trying to save her, just standing there with a calm that didn't need to prove anything. "Because no one deserves to be left like this." And somewhere in that silence, something shifted, not loud, not dramatic, but enough for her to take a step forward beside him, away from the altar, away from the laughter, toward a door she hadn't planned to walk through, unaware that outside, in the distance, the low hum of engines had already begun to grow. The church doors closed behind them with a soft wooden thud, and just like that, the noise, the laughter, the judgment stayed inside, while the outside air wrapped around them in a quiet that felt almost sacred. Claire did not say anything at first, her steps uneven on the stone walkway, her fingers clutching the edge of the jacket resting on her shoulders as if it were the only thing holding her together. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice fragile but steady enough to carry. "Somewhere warm," Ethan replied, already guiding her toward his old pickup truck parked beneath a flickering street lamp. She hesitated when she saw it, the chipped paint, the worn tires, the kind of vehicle that did not belong to the world she had just come from. 3 seconds of silence, 2 shallow breaths, 1 quiet decision. She opened the door and climbed in. The engine rumbled to life, low and steady, as Ethan pulled away from the church, the building shrinking in the rearview mirror until it was nothing more than a shadow behind them. Inside the truck, the heater clicked on with a soft hum, pushing out uneven warmth that filled the space between them. Claire stared straight ahead, her reflection faint in the windshield, her makeup smudged, her expression distant. You do this often? She asked after a moment, not looking at him. Pick up strangers from weddings? Ethan let out a small breath, almost a smile, but not quite. No, he said simply. Just seemed like you needed a ride. She nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly, studying him now. People usually want something, she said. Money. Attention. A story to tell later. 3 words, sharp and defensive. What do you want? Ethan kept his eyes on the road, the tires humming against the asphalt as the town lights passed by in slow rhythm. Nothing, he answered. Just thought you deserved better than that. The words hung in the air, heavier than they sounded, and for a moment, Claire did not respond. Outside, the sky deepened into a soft blue-gray, the last light of day fading behind rows of quiet houses and empty storefronts. The truck turned down a narrower street, one lined with small homes, porch lights glowing warm against the evening chill. This is me, Ethan said, pulling into a gravel driveway beside a modest 1-story house with a small front porch and a swing that creaked gently in the breeze. Claire looked at it, then back at him, confusion flickering across her face. You live here? She asked. Yeah, he said, shutting off the engine. It is not much, but it is quiet. She stepped out slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the gravel, her eyes scanning the simple space like it was something unfamiliar, something distant from everything she had known. Before she could say anything else, the front door swung open, and a small voice broke through the stillness. Dad. A little girl with messy brown hair and bright eyes stepped onto the porch, barefoot, holding a stuffed toy close to her chest. She paused when she saw Claire, tilting her head with innocent curiosity. Who is that? She asked softly. Ethan walked up the steps, his voice gentler now, warmer. This is Claire, he said. She needed a place to sit for a while. The little girl studied Claire for a second, then smiled in a way that carried no judgment. No questions about wealth or status, only simple kindness. You can come in, she said. It is warmer inside. Claire blinked, caught off guard by something she had not felt all day, something quiet and unexpected. Not pity, not curiosity, just welcome. And as she stepped toward the door, the faint sound of distant engines, low and synchronized, began to echo somewhere far down the road, still unseen, but slowly, steadily, getting closer. The door closed gently behind her, and for the first time that day, the world stopped watching. The air inside the house carried the soft scent of cinnamon and old wood, warm and steady, like it had nothing to prove. Claire stood just inside the doorway, her heels quiet against the worn floor, her eyes slowly adjusting not to the light, but to something far more unfamiliar, a place where no one was judging her. You can sit here, the little girl said, pulling out a chair at a small kitchen table, her voice simple, sincere, untouched by the weight of what had just happened hours ago. Claire hesitated, her fingers still gripping the edge of Ethan's jacket. Thank you, she said softly, lowering herself into the chair, as if she were afraid the moment might disappear if she moved too quickly. Ethan moved quietly around the kitchen, filling a kettle, setting 2 mugs on the table, his movements practiced, calm, like a man who had learned how to make silence feel safe. Tea okay? He asked without looking at her. Yes, Claire replied, though her voice carried more emotion than the word itself. 3 seconds passed. The kettle began to hum. 2 breaths filled the room. 1 quiet shift settled between them. The little girl climbed into the chair across from Claire, resting her chin in her hands, studying her with open curiosity. I like your dress, she said. It looks like a princess dress. Claire blinked, caught off guard, a faint smile forming before she could stop it. It did not feel like one today, she admitted. The girl tilted her head. It can still be, she said simply. Ethan poured the hot water, the steam rising between them like something unspoken, something gentle. This is Lily, he said, placing a mug in front of Claire. Lily, this is Claire. Hi, Claire, Lily said, her voice warm, steady. You can stay as long as you need. Claire looked at her, really looked this time, and something in her expression softened, something that had been tight all day finally loosened. Thank you, she whispered again, but this time it meant more. Outside, the night deepened, and the quiet street held its breath. Inside, the sound of spoons against ceramic, the soft creak of the house settling, the steady rhythm of something real began to take shape. You have a nice home, Claire said after a moment, her voice quieter now, less guarded. Ethan shrugged slightly. It is enough, he replied. Enough is good. She nodded slowly, her eyes drifting around the room, taking in the small details, drawings on the fridge, a pair of tiny shoes by the door, a life built not on power, but on presence. You are not curious? She asked suddenly, looking back at him. About me? Ethan leaned back slightly, folding his arms, his expression unchanged. You will tell me if you want to, he said. If not, that is okay too. 3 words she did not expect. No pressure, no demand, just space. Claire looked down at her hands, the ring still there, heavy now for a different reason. She slowly slid it off, placing it on the table with a soft, deliberate motion. I was not supposed to be there today, she said quietly. Lily frowned slightly. But you were, she said. Claire nodded, a faint breath leaving her lips. Yes, she whispered. I was. And somewhere beyond the quiet walls of that small house, the distant hum of engines grew louder, closer now, no longer a whisper in the night, but a presence approaching with purpose, with precision, with a kind of silence that did not belong to this simple, warm place at all. The ring rested on the table between them, small, perfect, and suddenly meaningless, catching the soft kitchen light like it still believed it belonged somewhere else. Claire kept her eyes on it, her fingers now still, as if letting go of it had taken more strength than anything she had done that day. He was supposed to show up, she said quietly, her voice no longer breaking, just tired. Everything was planned. The guests, the vows, the future, all of it decided before I even had time to question it. Ethan did not interrupt. Lily did not move. 3 seconds passed, the house holding its breath. 2 soft ticks of the kitchen clock echoed in the background. One truth settled into the room. Did you love him? Lily asked gently, her voice carrying no judgment, only curiosity that children never learn to hide. Claire blinked, surprised by the question, then slowly shook her head. I thought I was supposed to, she admitted. That is not the same. Ethan said quietly, his tone steady, not correcting, just placing the truth where it belonged. Claire let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but softer, more fragile. No, she said. It is not. Outside, the faint glow of headlights began to stretch across the far end of the street, barely visible through the thin curtains, but growing with quiet certainty. Inside, the warmth remained untouched, the kettle now silent, the tea cooling in their hands. So why did you stay? Ethan asked, not pushing, just opening a door. Claire looked up, her eyes clearer now, less guarded, more honest. Because walking away would have disappointed people who build a life around my name, she said. And staying was easier than explaining who I really am. 3 words followed, almost a whisper. Or was? Ethan nodded once, understanding more than he let on. People confuse comfort with truth, he said. They are not the same either. Lily swung her legs slightly under the table, her small voice cutting through the weight again. My dad says if something feels wrong in your chest, you should listen to it. Claire looked at her, really looked this time, and something softened again, something deeper than before. Your dad is very wise, she said. Ethan shook his head lightly. No, he replied. Just learn the hard way. The room grew quiet again, not empty, but full of something steady, something real. Then, in the distance, the sound became undeniable. Low engines. Smooth, synchronized. Not loud, not aggressive, just present in a way that did not belong to a street like this. Claire's eyes shifted toward the window, her expression changing, not in fear, but in recognition. 3 headlights appeared at the corner. Then 6. Then more. 2 seconds of silence. 1 realization. They found me, she said softly. Ethan did not ask who they were. He simply stood, walking to the window, his posture calm, his expression unchanged as the line of black SUVs rolled slowly down the quiet road, one after another, their polished surfaces reflecting the streetlights like moving shadows. They stopped in front of the house with precise stillness, engines idling in quiet control. Doors opened, not rushed, not chaotic, just deliberate. Lily looked up at Ethan. Are they here for her? She asked. Ethan did not answer right away. Claire stood slowly, her hand resting lightly on the back of the chair, her gaze steady now, no longer lost. Yes, she said. And in that moment, the small kitchen, filled with warmth and quiet dignity, stood in sharp contrast to the world that had just arrived outside, waiting, watching, ready to take her back. The engines did not roar, they hummed, low and controlled, like power that never needed to announce itself, and the quiet street that had held nothing but porch lights and evening air now carried a presence that felt heavier with every passing second. Claire stood still, her hand resting lightly on the back of the chair, her shoulders no longer trembling, but not relaxed either, as if she had been expecting this moment long before it arrived. "You should go," she said softly, not looking at Ethan, her voice carrying something close to acceptance. "That is what they are here for." Ethan did not move. Lily looked between them, her small fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "Are they going to take you away?" she asked, her voice quieter now, uncertain in a way it had not been before. Claire turned toward her, her expression softening. Again, but this time there was something deeper behind it, something heavier than sadness. "They are going to ask me to come back," she said. "And most people do not say no to them." 3 words settled in the room. Power. Expectation. Control. Outside, one of the car doors closed with a firm but measured sound, followed by footsteps on gravel, slow, deliberate, approaching the house without hurry. 2 shadows passed across the window. One paused at the front steps. Inside, the clock ticked once. Then again. Then stopped matching. Ethan finally stepped forward, his voice calm, steady as it had been from the beginning. "Do you want to go?" he asked. Claire looked at him, really looked this time, as if the question itself had more weight than anything waiting outside. She opened her mouth, then stopped, her breath catching not in fear, but in something more complicated, something that had no easy answer. "I do not know," she admitted. "That is honest," Ethan said quietly. "It is also enough." Lily slid off her chair and walked closer, standing beside Claire, small but steady. "You can stay," she said. "Nobody here will make you do anything." Claire blinked, her eyes glistening now, but not breaking, not falling apart the way they had in the church. This was different. This was something quieter, something stronger. The knock came then, not loud, not aggressive, just 3 measured taps against the door, each one spaced with deliberate patience. Ethan glanced toward it, then back at Claire. "Your call," he said. "No one else gets to make it." Outside, the silhouettes remained still, waiting, not forcing, just present in a way that carried expectation without words. Inside, the air felt warmer, the small kitchen holding its ground against the world beyond the door. Claire looked down at the table where the ring still lay, untouched, a symbol of something she had already walked away from. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths filled the space. One decision began to form, not spoken yet, but growing, steady and undeniable. The knock came again, softer this time, almost respectful. And Claire took a step, not toward the door, but toward the center of the room, away from it. Her voice low but clear as she finally spoke the words she had not said all day. "I am tired of being expected." The words did not echo. They settled, quiet and firm, like something that had been waiting years to be said out loud. And for a moment, even the world outside seemed to pause, as if listening. "I am tired of being expected." Claire's voice did not shake this time. It held, steady in a way that surprised even her. And in that stillness, something inside her shifted from hesitation to resolve. The knock did not come again. Instead, the handle turned slowly, not forced, not aggressive, just enough to signal presence. And then it stopped, respecting the line that had not yet been crossed. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths filled the room. One choice stood at the center of it all. Ethan did not move toward the door. He did not step in front of it either. He simply stood where he was, his posture relaxed, his presence steady, offering something rare, space without pressure. Lily reached for Claire's hand without asking, her small fingers wrapping around it with a simple certainty that carried no agenda. "You do not have to go," she whispered. Claire looked down at her, then back toward the door, her expression no longer uncertain, but thoughtful, as if weighing not the people outside, but the life behind her. "Miss Whitmore," a voice called from the other side, calm, composed, trained to carry authority without raising volume. "We are here to ensure your safety and to escort you home." The word lingered. Home. Claire's lips pressed together slightly, her eyes drifting around the small kitchen, the worn table, the quiet warmth. the child still holding her hand. "This is not where I belong," she said under her breath, almost to herself. Ethan heard it, but he did not correct her. "Belonging is not something other people assign," he said instead, his tone even. "It is something you choose." 3 words. Choose your place. Claire closed her eyes for a brief moment. The sound of the engines outside still low, controlled, waiting. The voice came again, patient but firmer this time. "There are people concerned about you. This situation has already drawn attention. It would be best if you step outside." Claire opened her eyes slowly, and something in them had changed, not defiance, not fear, just clarity. She gently released Lily's hand and took a step forward, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. The room felt smaller now, not in size, but in the way moments do when they are about to become something else. She reached the door and paused, her hand hovering near the handle, her reflection faint in the glass pane beside it. 3 seconds of silence. 2 steady breaths. 1 final shift. Then she turned, not opening the door, but facing Ethan and Lily again, her voice calm, grounded in a way it had not been before. "If I walk out there," she said, "everything goes back to the way it was." Ethan met her gaze, not trying to guide her, not trying to stop her. "Only if you let it," he replied. Outside, the figures remained still, the line of vehicles stretching down the quiet street like a boundary between 2 worlds. Inside, the air held something fragile but real, something that could not be replaced once lost. Claire looked at the door one last time, then slowly lowered her hand, stepping back from it, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying more power than anything outside could offer. "Then I will not." The words did not rise. They settled, quiet and final, like a door closing without sound, and for the first time since the engines arrived, the power outside met something it could not immediately move. Claire stood there, no longer near the door, no longer reaching for anything beyond the walls of that small house. Her shoulders relaxed in a way that did not come from comfort, but from decision. "Then I will not." The sentence lingered in the air, simple, clear, and unshaken. Outside, the silence shifted. A second voice joined the first, lower, measured, the kind of voice used when control begins to slip, but dignity must remain. "Miss Whitmore." It called again, this time closer to the door. "We understand this is an emotional moment. However, there are responsibilities that require your attention." 3 words pressed forward. Responsibility. Obligation. Return. Inside, Lily tightened her grip. On Claire's hand again, her small presence steady as ever. "They keep saying what you have to do," she whispered. "But nobody asked what you want." Claire looked down at her, and for a moment, something almost like surprise crossed her face, not because the words were complex, but because they were honest in a way she had not heard all day. Ethan leaned lightly against the counter, his arms folded, his voice calm when he spoke. "People with power are not used to hearing no," he said. "It makes them uncomfortable." Claire let out a quiet breath, almost a soft laugh, the first real one since the church. "I can see that," she replied. Outside, a third knock came, not louder, but firmer, as if patience was beginning to thin. The handle moved again, just slightly, testing the boundary that had been set. Then stillness. Then the voice returned, composed but unmistakably more direct. "Miss Whitmore, the board is already convening. Your absence is being noticed. This is not just personal. This affects more than you." The words were precise, chosen carefully, meant to pull her back not with force, but with weight. Claire turned slowly toward the door again, her gaze steady, not drawn, just aware. "There it is," she said softly. "It is never just about me." 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths filled the space. One truth settled deeper than before. Ethan pushed off the counter, taking a step closer, not toward the door, but toward her. "That is how they keep you," he said. "Make you believe your life belongs to everyone else." Claire nodded faintly, her eyes never leaving the door. "And maybe it did," she admitted. "For a long time." Lily stepped forward slightly, her voice small but certain. "But it does not have to anymore." Claire closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, the hesitation was gone, replaced by something quieter, something stronger. Not rebellion, not anger, just clarity. She took 1 step toward the door, and for a moment, the outside world seemed to lean in, waiting. Another step followed, measured, deliberate. Her hand reached the handle, resting there without turning it. 3 seconds of stillness. 2 steady breaths. One shift that could not be undone. Then, instead of opening it, she spoke, her voice clear enough to carry through the wood without rising. Tell them I am safe. A pause followed. Tell them I am thinking. Outside, silence answered. Not refusal, not agreement, just a recalibration of expectation. Inside, Claire stepped back once more, her hand falling from the door, her voice softer now, but more certain than ever. And for the first time, she added quietly, that is enough. The silence that followed was not empty. It was measured, deliberate, like a room learning how to breathe again after holding it too long. And outside, something shifted in the rhythm of control as the voices did not return immediately, as if even power needed a moment to reconsider its next move. Claire stood still, her gaze no longer fixed on the door, but not entirely turned away from it either, caught in that narrow space between who she had been and who she was beginning to become. They are not used to waiting, she said quietly, her voice thoughtful, not afraid. Ethan gave a small nod, his expression unchanged, grounded. Then this might be the first time, he replied. Lily stepped closer, resting her head lightly against Claire's arm, a simple gesture that carried more reassurance than words. Waiting is not bad, she said. Sometimes it means something important is happening. Claire looked down at her, and a faint smile appeared again, softer this time, more certain. I think you are right, she whispered. Outside, a door from one of the vehicles opened and closed again, footsteps shifting positions, not retreating, but adjusting, like a chessboard being reset for a different kind of game. Then the voice returned, not louder, not sharper, but changed, less commanding, more careful. Miss Whitmore, it called, we will respect your request for space. However, there are matters that cannot be delayed indefinitely. 3 words followed, slower this time. Time. Pressure. Expectation. Inside, the kitchen remained steady, the warm light holding its quiet ground. Claire walked slowly back to the table, her hand brushing against the chair where she had sat earlier, her eyes falling once more on the ring. Resting alone against the wood, she picked it up, turning it gently between her fingers, not with attachment, but with understanding. This was never about love, she said softly. It was about alignment. Ethan leaned slightly against the counter again, his voice calm as ever. Alignment without truth does not last, he said. Claire nodded, placing the ring back down, but this time farther from her, as if creating distance not just in space, but in meaning. They built a future around who they thought I was, she said. And I agreed to it because it was easier than being honest. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths filled the room. 1 realization deepened. Lily climbed back into her chair, watching carefully, her voice small but steady. Are they going to be mad? She asked. Claire looked at her, then toward the door, then back again. Maybe, she answered. But that does not mean they are right. Outside, the engines did not turn off, but they softened, idling lower, less urgent, as if even they were adjusting to a pace they did not control. The porch light flickered once in the breeze, casting long shadows across the yard where the line of vehicles remained still, waiting without advancing. Inside, something fragile continued to grow, not loud, not dramatic, just present. Claire stepped toward the window now, standing beside Ethan, looking out at the world that had followed her here. I spent years being prepared for everything, she said. Every meeting, every decision, every expectation. She paused, her reflection faint in the glass. But no one prepared me for this. Ethan glanced at her, his voice quiet, almost a reminder. This is the part that matters. Claire watched the figures outside, their posture unchanged, their patience now visible in the stillness. 3 seconds of silence. 2 steady breaths. 1 quiet truth rising to the surface. Then maybe, she said softly, this is the first real choice I have ever made. And as the words settled, the space between the small house and the waiting world outside no longer felt like distance, but like a line drawn with quiet dignity, one that no one could cross without her permission. The night did not move, but something within it shifted, subtle and undeniable, like a current changing direction beneath still water, and Claire stood at the window, no longer watching the line of vehicles as something that controlled her, but as something waiting for her answer. They are still there, Lily said softly, her voice carrying a quiet kind of wonder, not fear. They have not left. Claire nodded once, her eyes steady. They will not leave without me. She replied, not with pride, not with resentment, just truth. Ethan rested one hand lightly against the window frame, his posture relaxed, his presence unchanged. Then they are not waiting for you, he said. They are waiting for your decision. 3 words settled again. Not pressure, not demand, just choice. Outside, one of the suited figures stepped slightly forward, stopping just before the edge of the porch, careful not to cross an invisible boundary that had been drawn without words. The voice returned, quieter now, more human than before. Miss Whitmore, it said, we have arranged everything for your return. The press has been redirected. The board is prepared to proceed when you are ready. Inside, Claire's reflection in the glass seemed different now, not the woman from earlier, not the one standing at the altar, but someone in between, someone learning to stand on her own terms. Prepared, she repeated softly. They are always prepared. Ethan glanced at her, his tone calm, grounded. Preparation is not the same as permission, he said. Claire exhaled slowly, the breath steady, deliberate, as if she were measuring something deeper than the moment. For years, she said, every decision I made was already shaped before I made it. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths filled the room. One truth came into focus. And now? Ethan asked, not pushing, just opening space. Claire turned slightly, looking at him, then at Lily, then back toward the window. Now it feels like the decision is mine, she said. Lily smiled, small but certain. That sounds better, she said. Claire's lips curved again, not wide, not loud, but real. Outside, the man near the porch adjusted his stance, not stepping forward, not retreating, just holding position. The vehicles remained in a perfect line, engines low, patient, disciplined. The world beyond the house had not changed, but the way it was being seen had. Claire stepped away from the window and walked back toward the table, her movements slower now, more intentional. She picked up the ring again, holding it in her palm, feeling its weight one last time. This represented everything they expected, she said quietly. Stability, alliance, control. Ethan nodded once. And what does it represent now? He asked. Claire looked at it for a long moment, then closed her fingers around it, not gripping tightly, just enough to hold it. A choice I almost made, she answered. She walked to the small counter near the sink and placed the ring there, not hidden, not displayed, just set aside, as if returning it to a place where it no longer defined anything. 3 seconds of stillness followed. 2 steady breaths. 1 quiet release. Lily watched closely, her voice gentle. Are you going to tell them? She asked. Claire turned toward the door again, her posture straight, her expression calm in a way that carried no hesitation. Yes, she said. Ethan stepped back slightly, giving her space, not guiding, not leading, just present. Claire walked to the door once more, her hand resting on the handle, not hovering this time, but holding it with quiet certainty. Outside, the figures straightened almost imperceptibly, sensing the shift. The engines continued their low hum, the night holding its breath again. Claire did not rush. She did not hesitate. She opened the door slowly, stepping onto the threshold, the warm light from inside meeting the cool darkness outside, her voice clear, steady, and completely her own as she finally spoke into the waiting silence. You can go back, she said. I am not coming tonight. And for the first time since they arrived, the stillness outside was not control, it was something else entirely, something closer to respect. The words did not echo, they landed, calm and unshaken, and for a moment the night itself seemed to pause, as if even power needed time to understand what had just been said. Claire stood at the threshold, the warm light from behind her outlining her silhouette, not as someone being taken, but as someone choosing to stand still. You can go back. I am not coming tonight. The man closest to the porch did not respond immediately. His posture remained straight, his hands loosely at his sides, his training holding him steady even as the script shifted beneath his feet. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths moved through the cool air. One new reality settled between them. Miss Whitmore, he said finally, his voice lower now, less commanding, more careful. This is unexpected. Claire did not step back. She did not raise her voice. She simply met his gaze with a calm that did not need reinforcement. So was today, she replied. Behind her, Ethan remained just inside the doorway, not interrupting, not stepping forward, his presence quiet but unmistakable, like a line that did not need to be drawn again. Lily stood beside him, peeking out just enough to see, her small hand gripping the edge of the doorframe. Outside, the row of vehicles remained still, engines humming softly, the kind of controlled patience that had always meant certainty, until now. There are consequences to delaying your return, the man continued, choosing his words with precision. Decisions are pending. Agreements rely on your presence. Claire nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth without accepting the weight of it. Then they will have to wait, she said. No anger. No hesitation. Just clarity. The man's expression shifted, not to frustration, but to something closer to recalculation. You are certain? He asked. Claire glanced briefly over her shoulder, not seeking permission, but grounding herself in the quiet behind her, the small kitchen, the soft light, the child who had offered her a seat without knowing her name. Then she looked forward again. For the first time, she said, yes. 3 words settled again. Certainty. Ownership. Peace. The air held still for a moment longer, and then something subtle changed. The man gave a small nod, not submissive, not defeated, but respectful in a way that had not been there before. Very well, he said. We will inform the board. He stepped back slowly, turning with the same controlled movement he had approached with, signaling without words to the others. Doors opened quietly. Figures returned to their positions. The engines remained steady, but the intention behind them had shifted. Inside, Lily let out a breath she had been holding without realizing it. They are leaving, she whispered. Ethan watched calmly, his voice low. Looks like it. Claire remained where she was, not closing the door yet, not rushing the moment, her eyes following as one by one. The vehicles began to move, pulling away with the same precision they had arrived with, but without the same certainty. 3 seconds passed. 2 final engines turned down the street. One silence returned, deeper than before. Claire slowly stepped back inside, her hand resting on the door as she closed it gently, the sound soft, final, not like an ending, but like something beginning. She stood there for a moment, the quiet settling around her again, different now, earned. They listened, Lily said softly. Claire looked down at her, a faint smile forming, stronger this time. No, she said. They heard me. And in that simple difference, something in the room felt larger than before, as if dignity itself had taken shape and decided to stay. The door closed with a soft click, and the sound lingered just long enough to mark the end of something that had followed her for years, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet finality that settled deep in the room. Claire stood there for a moment, her hands still resting against the wood, her reflection faint in the glass pane, no longer searching for who she was supposed to be, but simply existing as who she had chosen to become. 3 seconds passed. 2 steady breaths filled her chest. One truth remained. She turned slowly, stepping back into the warmth of the house, the air different now, lighter, as if something invisible had been lifted. Lily walked up to her without hesitation, her small arms wrapping gently around Claire's waist, a gesture so simple it carried more meaning than anything said outside. You stayed, she whispered. Claire closed her eyes briefly, her hand resting lightly on the child's shoulder. Yes, she said. I did. Ethan watched from a few steps away, his posture relaxed, his expression unchanged, but there was something quieter in his eyes now, something that recognized the weight of what had just happened without needing to name it. That is not easy, he said. Claire let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, but steadier this time. No, she admitted. But it feels right. She moved back toward the table, her fingers brushing against the surface where the ring still rested, untouched, forgotten in a way that felt intentional now. She did not pick it up. She did not need to. They will call again, she said after a moment, her tone thoughtful, not worried. They will try to explain, to convince, to reorganize everything around this decision. Ethan nodded once. That is what systems do, he said. They adjust until you fit again. Claire looked at him, her gaze clearer than before. And if I do not? She asked. Ethan met her eyes, calm as ever. Then they will have to adjust to you. 3 words settled in the space between them. Not defiance. Not resistance. Just truth. Lily climbed back into her chair, swinging her legs lightly, her voice soft but certain. I think they will, she said. You sound like someone they cannot ignore. Claire smiled faintly, the kind of smile that did not come from relief, but from recognition. I am not sure I ever gave them a reason to listen before, she said. She walked toward the small window again, glancing out at the now empty street, the space where the vehicles had been still marked by faint tire lines and the quiet memory of presence. I was always where they expected me to be, she added, saying what I was supposed to say. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet breaths followed. One realization deepened. But not tonight, Ethan said. Claire shook her head gently. Not tonight. The house settled into its quiet rhythm again. The faint creak of the floor, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ordinary sounds of a life that did not revolve around expectation. Claire turned back toward them, her posture no longer uncertain, her voice softer, but grounded in something new. I do not know. What happens next, she admitted. Lily looked up at her, her expression bright in its simplicity. Maybe that is the best part, she said. Claire paused, then nodded slowly. Maybe it is. And in that moment, there was no rush to decide, no pressure to return, just a quiet space where something real could begin, not built on obligation, not shaped by others, but chosen, one small, steady step at a time. The night stretched quietly around the small house, no longer interrupted by engines or footsteps, but filled instead with a kind of stillness that felt earned, like a breath finally released after being held too long. Claire remained by the window for a moment longer, her gaze soft, no longer searching for what had left, but settling into what remained. The street outside looked ordinary again, empty, unremarkable, as if nothing extraordinary had happened there at all. But inside her, everything had changed. It is strange, she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. For the first time, nothing is decided. Ethan leaned lightly against the counter, his voice calm, steady as always. That can feel uncomfortable, he said. But it can also be freedom. Claire nodded slowly, letting the word settle. Freedom. It did not sound loud or dramatic. It sounded quiet, real. Lily slid her chair closer, resting her arms on the table, watching Claire with the same open honesty she had carried all evening. What are you going to do tomorrow? She asked. The question was simple, but it landed differently now. Claire paused, considering it in a way she never had before. I do not know, she admitted. And that does not scare me as much as I thought it would. 3 seconds passed. 2 steady breaths followed. One new perspective took root. She walked back to the table, her fingers brushing lightly against the wood, grounding herself in something tangible, something present. For years, tomorrow was always planned, she continued. Meetings scheduled, decisions outlined, expectations already waiting. Ethan nodded once. And now, he asked. Claire looked at him, her expression calm, but clearer than it had ever been. Now tomorrow feels like something I get to meet, she said. Lily smiled, her eyes bright with something that did not need explanation. That sounds better, she said again. Claire let out a soft breath, a quiet laugh following, not from relief, but from recognition. It does, she agreed. The house settled deeper into its quiet rhythm. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock, the kind of sounds that usually went unnoticed, but now felt like part of something steady, something real. Claire glanced once more toward the counter where the ring remained, untouched, no longer holding power, no longer defining anything. She did not move toward it. She did not need to. They will rebuild the plan, she said after a moment. They always do. Ethan's voice remained even, unshaken. Plans are only as strong as the people who follow them, he said. Claire nodded, understanding the weight behind that simple truth. Then maybe it is time they build something different, she replied. 3 words lingered. Something different now. Lily stood up and walked over, gently taking Claire's hand again, her small grip steady and warm. You can stay here tonight, she said. We have extra blankets. Claire looked down at her, her expression softening once more, but this time with something deeper, something that felt like belonging, not assigned, not expected, but chosen. I would like that, she said quietly. Ethan gave a small nod, already moving toward the hallway, not making it a moment, not turning it into something bigger than it needed to be, just making space. Claire followed slowly, her steps lighter now, not because her life had become easier, but because it had become hers. And as the lights dimmed and the house settled into the calm of the night, there was no sound of engines, no voices calling her back, only the quiet presence of something new beginning, not with certainty, but with choice. Morning arrived quietly, not with urgency, not with expectation, but with a soft light that slipped through the curtains and settled gently across the small room, touching everything without asking for anything in return. Claire woke slowly, not startled, not pulled by obligation, but rising into a moment that felt different from any morning she had known before. For a few seconds, she did not move. 2 steady breaths filled her chest. One realization came softly. There was nowhere she had to be. She sat up, the simple blanket still wrapped around her, the unfamiliar room no longer strange, but calm in a way that felt grounding. The events of the night before did not rush back all at once. They returned in pieces. The church, the silence, the door, the choice, and then the quiet that followed. She stood and walked toward the window, her reflection faint in the glass, her expression no longer searching, no longer uncertain, just present. Outside, the street looked exactly the same as it always had. No black vehicles, no waiting figures, just early sunlight and still air. But something inside her knew that nothing was the same anymore. "You are up early." Ethan's voice came gently from behind as he stepped into the doorway, a mug of coffee in his hand, the faint smell of it filling the room. Claire turned, offering a small, genuine smile. "I did not feel like sleeping longer," she said. "It feels like I have already been asleep for a long time." Ethan gave a quiet nod, understanding without needing more. "Coffee?" he asked, holding out the second mug. She took it, her fingers wrapping around the warmth, grounding her again. "Thank you," she said softly. 3 seconds passed. 2 quiet sips followed. One new beginning settled in. Lily's voice echoed faintly from the kitchen, cheerful, unburdened. "Are you coming?" she called. Claire glanced toward the hallway, then back at Ethan. "I do not know what happens next," she admitted again. But this time her voice did not carry uncertainty. It carried openness. Ethan leaned lightly against the doorframe, his tone steady, unchanged. "You do not have to," he said. "You just have to take the next step." Claire nodded slowly, letting that settle, not as advice, but as truth. She walked toward the door, pausing briefly, her hand resting on the frame, not hesitating, just acknowledging the moment. Behind her, on the small counter in the other room, the ring remained where she had left it, untouched, silent, no longer calling her back. She did not turn to look at it. She did not need to. She stepped into the hallway, the soft light following her, her posture steady, her steps quiet but certain. Lily looked up from the table, smiling the same simple, honest smile as before. "Good morning," she said. Claire returned the smile, this time without hesitation. "Good morning," she replied. And in that small exchange, there was no audience, no expectation, no plan waiting to be fulfilled, only a moment that belonged entirely to her. 3 seconds of stillness followed. 2 steady breaths filled the space. One quiet truth remained, not spoken, but understood. Sometimes the greatest change does not come with noise or recognition. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in a small house, on an ordinary morning, when someone finally chooses their own life, and the world, for the first time, listens.